First time since March, the average gas prices are under $4 a gallon. Many people are relieved, but don't be fooled. Today, we're looking at why gas prices have gone down and how soon recession will hit. So if you think gas prices will continue to drop, well, brace yourself because the storm isn't over yet. Months ago, when prices at the pump topped $5 a gallon, most of us drivers started being more discerning with how much we were driving and how much gasoline we would buy. Many of us started looking at other ways to save on gas. For example, carpooling, cutting out unnecessary trips, and combining errands became the normal way of life. And statistics show that it worked, at least for a while. In fact, in this past July, gas consumption in the U.S. was about 9% less than it was last summer. So it was a notable drop in consumer demand. And then, of course, there's oil supply. Compared to 1 year ago, domestic crude supply has increased by more than 6%. But another factor was fear. Now, usually fear isn't a good sign. But when it comes to gas prices, fear has actually helped a lot. Growing concerns and fears of a global economic shutdown also weighed on crude oil prices. And those lower crude oil prices account for about half of the cost of gasoline. Analysts predict that collectively, Americans will spend $340 million less on gasoline today than we did last June when prices peaked. Now ask anyone in the commodity market and they'll say that the cure for high prices is high prices. That might sound counterintuitive, but here's why it makes sense. High prices drive down demand. And when demand goes down, the prices fall too. Some states also started suspending their gas taxes, and that artificially pushes the gas prices even lower. But that's not the main reason why gas prices have fallen. Actually, it has to do with the decline in the price of crude oil, which is the single largest factor that influences gas prices. Anytime there's a change in global economic conditions, crude oil is typically the first to be affected. The price of gasoline has become a major topic at the White House, especially as we're approaching the midterm elections. President Joe Biden has repeatedly stated his administration is doing everything they can to ease the burden on American consumers. Ever wonder which states have the cheapest gas prices and expensive gas? If you're trying to save a few pennies at the pump, don't drive west. In general, the western states have the highest prices. The top three most expensive gas prices are in Hawaii and California, around $5.33 a gallon, followed by Nevada, Alaska, and Oregon. Believe it or not, there are currently 26 states with an average of less than $4 a gallon. The top 5 states where gas is the cheapest are in the South. First up is Texas. Everything is bigger in Texas except its gas prices. Other states that are among the cheapest are Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Georgia. If you think falling gas prices is a good thing, well, yeah, there's goodness there, but it's also bad news too. The good news is obvious. We all want lower gas prices for all. Bad news is that it's the very factor that's driving the prices down. Americans are worried about high prices, and many have been cutting back on driving to cope with inflation. So much so that it's now being referred to as a demand destruction. Many consumers have been purposely buying less gasoline because it's been so expensive. Here's the thing. Some see this as a sign we're on the way to a recession. A few even say that technically we're already in a recession because we've seen 6 straight months of negative growth, 2 quarters of negative GDP. But here's the thing. Most people aren't feeling it yet. That's because people are still vacationing right now after 3 years of the pandemic. Airlines are still overbooked and job growth hasn't been negatively impacted as of yet. Whether we've just entered a recession and will feel the impact later or whether we'll face recession soon, regardless, recession isn't a good thing either. During a recession, the economy struggles, people lose work, companies get fewer revenues, and total economic output declines. For example, in the last recession, more than 22 million people were laid off. Many who kept their jobs had their hours or commission rates or bonuses reduced. For now, no one's complaining about falling gas prices. It's a welcome change, especially amid the current 40-year high inflation rate. But that said, gas prices still aren't as low as it used to be. Right now, gas still costs 81 cents more per gallon than it did last year. High gas and energy prices have been a major driver of inflation. To get food on shelves across the nation, it needs to be transported. And to transport things, you need lots of gas and energy. It only makes sense that if food transportation prices go up, so will the price of food increase when it hits the store's shelves. And that's why we've been seeing higher than normal inflation. Now that energy prices are falling, prices in other sectors are falling too. Inflation rates are starting to decrease. Overall energy price dropped by 4.6% month over month-over-month in July 2022. By the same month, gasoline prices had fallen 7.7%. Good news, right? Well, you have to understand that we're only looking at 1 month there. 1 month of dropping prices is no guarantee that this will continue to trend into future months. But let's say gas prices will continue to drop. What'll happen to inflation then? Well, one thing's for sure, lower gas prices would be a big help when it comes to the cost of living. Annual inflation hit a record-breaking 9.1% this June, the highest it's been since late 1981. So you can see what a relief dropping gas prices can mean for inflation. But here's the thing, it's not just gas prices that have been climbing. Prices have been increasing for things across the board. Many of these prices are known to bounce up and down. Just look at the temperature, for example. Even in one 24-hour day, temperatures can change. Some states like Texas have been experiencing temperatures in the high 100s since May. That means cooling units are working overtime, and electricity bills are out of the world. And don't even get me started on the cost of groceries and housing. Inflation is impacting just about everything. So yes, nobody is complaining about lower gas prices. It's a relief for sure. But this drop is by no means a cure-all for inflation. So which is worse, recession or rising inflation? Well, financial experts say a recession is the lesser of two evils because inflation, especially at the rate it's been increasing, is very crippling. For now, though, things are blurry where we are and probably won't even get clearer only in hindsight. Everyone's wondering the same thing. Will gas prices ever return back to normal? Or will it go back up again? Well, if you ask me, here's what I think gas prices are headed. Most experts agree that this temporary relief in gas prices may be short-lived. The drop in gasoline prices has been major, but we're seeing prices slowly increasing back up again, percentage by percentage. The global energy market is still on edge, and there are many factors that could end pushing prices up to record-breaking levels in the months to come. Here in the U.S., the historic release of barrels from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve ends this autumn. Once that happens, we'll see less supply volume. Also, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve will need to be refilled, and that sure won't help gas supply one bit. And then there's Europe. The full slate of European sanctions against Russian fuel haven't officially gone into effect yet. Remember, Russia is a top energy producer. And so, once these sanctions do go into full effect, the EU will be left scrambling to secure supplies from other countries. This could end up spiking prices globally. And then, of course, there's general high demand of gas globally. And it doesn't look to be going down anytime soon. To keep up with current demand, refiners are running at full speed to keep pace. Currently this year, there is a demand growth of 2.1 million barrels per day. That's 380,000 more barrels per day than the previous forecast. When it comes to the few months we have left of this year, some analysts say that it's hard to predict if gas prices will continue to fall or not. Really, anything could happen. A freak massive hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico could knock out drilling rigs or refineries. Gas supplies would then go down, prices would go up. And let's not forget geopolitical trends. One major event could send gas prices through the roof again. All these factors combine to make it hard to say if the current relief at the pump is here to stay. All this to say we're living in uncertain times. It's hard to predict if or when we'll ever get back to normal. Why did gas prices even increase in the first place anyway? Well, an obvious factor is Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Get this. According to the White House, at its peak, the current Russian-Ukrainian war raised gasoline prices by more than $1.70 per gallon. Now, the U.S. doesn't actually import much crude from Russia, but oil itself is traded on a global market, and so any change affects prices across the globe. So what's the highest gas went? Well, that would have been this past June 13th when gas prices hit a jaw, dropping record-breaking $5.02 a gallon. Technically speaking, though, if you adjusted for inflation, that price was still lower than the 2008 peak of $4.14 a gallon. Now, while Russia's invasion of Ukraine has been a major factor in increasing gas prices, it isn't the only one. Current gasoline demand is nearing a pre-pandemic level, but for some reason, producers are still hesitant to start increasing production, and that's bad news. There's been a supply and demand imbalance for a while, and according to analysts, this imbalance is here to stay, whether or not the conflict goes away. President Joe Biden has also accused top oil companies of profiteering. He said that amidst a war that has raised gasoline prices by more than $1.70 per gallon, historically high refinery profit margins are only worsening that pain. In fact, this past June 15th, President Biden even went as far as to writing a letter to the heads of Shell, Chevron, ExxonMobil, and other companies. But that wasn't all. Back in March 2022, the White House began releasing 1 million barrels of oil a day from the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve. This withdrawal is unprecedented. It's expected to last for 6 months. And during these months, gas prices prices are expected to decrease between 10 and 35 cents a gallon. Now, that may sound great in theory, but some analysts are calling this release a pretty good Band-Aid solution. And now the 6 months of release is almost up, and what do you think will happen afterwards? I'll talk more about that later in the video. Also, this past April 2022, the Environmental Protection Agency approved year-round sales of a cheaper, higher ethanol fuel. It's called E15. Honestly, that impact hasn't been major. Only about 2,500 of the more than 100,000 gas stations across the nation sell the blend. But that's not the only place the U.S. is looking for energy products. In mid-2022, President Biden went to Saudi Arabia to encourage them to increase their output. Their response? They said they're already pumping at full throttle. So not the success of a trip that Biden hoped for. And unfortunately, it's only bad news from there. This year, major oil companies like BP, Shell, and Exxon are only expected to invest half of what they did in production 10 years ago. Did you know that in 2018, Venezuela has been completely banned from selling oil to the United States? But the Biden administration has actually been working to improve diplomatic relations with Venezuela. The White House is also negotiating another nuclear non-proliferation treaty with Iran. And that could end up bringing Iranian oil back to the market. We'll just have to wait and see whether or not these two relationships prove to be successful. But now, you tell me, how do you view the future? Do you think gas prices will go back up and break the $5 mark this year? Please share your opinion by commenting below. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for your support.